Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, welcome to Talking Joe. It's me, Mark, and we've got a very special episode today. We're going to have Ron Rudat on with us. He's been associated with G.I. Joe for over the 40 years of its life because he was there from before the beginning. He was part of Hasbro's research and development team. He designed pretty much every single figure from 1982 through to 1986 and into 87 and beyond, as well as several vehicles and some of those iconic graphics. Simply put, without Ron, the G.I. Joe characters as we know them would not have existed. So it's a great honor to have him on today, and I will not be talking to him alone because I will be joined by my good friend, and it's Real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a Real American Tim. American Tim.
Yeet. Hello, Mark, and hello, viewers and listeners.
And let's not waste any more time before we get him on. Let's introduce the main man. It's Ron Rudat. Hi, Ron. How are you?
I am in Massachusetts, and Mark, where are you?
I am on the south coast of England, in Brighton.
And
South Coast.
And Ron, where are you?
I'm in Massachusetts as well.
And are you specifically in your studio?
Yes, I am.
And you have had this studio for many years, right?
I've lived in this house 40 years.
So when you were working at Hasbro, you went to Pawtucket and you drew at a desk and you went to meetings, but all of the work that you have created at home, you have created in this studio?
Correct. Well, not all the G.I. Joe stuff actually was done all at work, but I would oftentimes bring that work home with me and do some of the work here.
Okay. And any personal artwork that you've made, models or paintings, you have done in this studio?
Pretty much, yeah.
I think since you have known this studio and worked in it for so long, it might seem a little ho-hum to you. Like, yeah, it's my studio. This is where I sit. This is where I do interviews.
Yeah, it's my getaway place.
Is that to say that is it sort of off limits for your family and friends, or is it?
No, anybody can come up here anytime they want.
And it's
a total disaster up here, though.
This is the third floor of your home?
Yeah, my studio's in the attic.
Okay. And you have a couple windows. There's good light.
I have sunlight, a sunroof, and a window.
Okay. I mean, part of why I'm being so specific here is because artists or painters want good light in their studios, and often want northern light because I'm trying to remember. Right. Northern light is it the most even?
It's hard to say. I mean, yeah, it's the most even, but it gives you the correct light when you're doing a painting.
In terms of color.
In terms of color, yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
What I was starting to get at before is if your studio is familiar and comfortable to you, I think for some of our viewers, they have never known where you work when you work at home, or maybe they don't know anything about an artist's home studio. And so even this little picture of you sitting in a chair in front of a disaster is sort of a ticket to a new world.
Yeah, it's a fantasy land up here, I guess. I have work everywhere. I have work. I have a day bed over here, and it's just filled with paintings. And then I have other stuff just laying around. I have paintings on the walls. I have artwork from Hasbro stuck in a corner over there. And just junk everywhere. I'm planning on doing a major cleanup of it soon.
Okay. So I see 2 big 3-ring binders behind you and maybe a big book. I'm guessing that that's reference.
Yeah, there's a lot of reference there. I was a model maker. Well, not a model maker, but I was I had a hobby of painting what they call Zen figurines from Germany. And a lot of my reference is military. And then I have a lot of art books here too.
Okay, so when you say reference, what I take that to mean is books of soldiers' uniforms,
Correct.
weaponry, images of planes and vehicles and tanks.
No, this is much older than that. I like anything that was before World War I or before World War II.
Okay.
And then I don't have a lot of World War II period things or World War I. Most of my stuff is probably from 15th century up.
Okay. Is there something about that era in sort of geography or in history?
I like the uniforms and costumes of that time.
Okay. So when you say 15th century, what countries or what armies or what wars are you thinking?
That's hard to say. You know, I mean, you can go from the War of the Roses all the way up, and you know, Louis the 16th. You know, and just various different periods.
But this is Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like it's also Japan or China or like South America. It's Europe.
Mostly Europe.
Okay.
And of course the American Civil War, because I was a Civil War reenactor at one time.
How long did you do that for?
About 13 years.
How often would you go and do that?
Well, most of the time doing the reenactments was from probably May to October. I was on a competition musket shooting team at one time. I shoot an 1861 model Springfield original. So, you know, we would go to different competitions throughout New England or New York, and once a year down in Virginia.
So, am I hearing that there are 2 different activities that are related? Because when I think of reenactments for the Civil War, I think of people dressing up as one army or the other or both, and acting out a battle in a location. You are also describing a marksmanship competition.
Right.
So were you doing the first one? Were you reenacting in battles?
No.
Okay. Just riflery.
Pretty much competition musket shooting.
But in costume.
Huh?
In costume.
In costume with other Civil War teams.
Okay. And you were on a team.
You're right.
How did you find the team and how big was it?
I helped form that team.
How did you form it?
Well, I didn't start the team, but It was started by another guy whose great grandfather was in the Civil War and was in the cavalry unit. And I had heard about it. My best friend heard about it. And we just all got together and we started this group. And yeah, so that went for a while. I was in that group for a little, I don't know how long I was. But we researched our own uniforms and everything like that. You know, I was with a Southern unit. I wasn't with a Yankee unit. I was with a Southern unit, so the uniforms were a little harder to figure out, and and eventually, we started out with gray uniforms, of course, with the South. But as you look into the history of the uniforms from different locations in the country, they had different materials and different colors of their uniforms. Seeing I was in a Virginia unit, I did a lot of research on it, and my uniform ended up being a butternut homespun brown uniform.
Wow.
So I still have that. It's a World War I blanket. Believe it or not, it was made from a blanket, my jacket.
Okay.
World War I was a homespun cloth. On that uniform I always look for original buttons, not reproduction ones, but original buttons. So they're on my uniform, they're Yankee buttons on my Southern jacket.
Okay.
You can't find the Confederate buttons. They're really hard to find.
So I don't know much about I did riflery. I shot with 22s when I went to summer camp when I was 10.
Right.
But from what little I know of history about, say, the Revolutionary War, older weapons, because they are less accurate or there's less consistency from weapon to weapon, I get the sense that they are difficult to fire with accuracy. Can you talk about firing a musket?
Yeah, it's easy to fire a musket.
Okay.
It takes a 58 caliber round. It's made out of lead. I made my own bullet heads, and they're called mini balls. And they're 3-ring bullets. I pack them into a little cylinder with the powder, which is probably about, I forgot how many grains, 52 grains of powder. And then you put the bullet on it, and then on top of the bullet you put Crisco, and that helps the bullet go through the barrel much easier. And yeah, you'd bite the bullet with your teeth, pour the powder down the barrel, put the bullet on top, and then you have a rammer on your rifle, and you take it and you ram it down so it's nice and tight. You bring it up, you pull back the hammer, and then you put the cap, which is on the back of the nipple, they call it, and the cap just fires the flame into the barrel and goes off. My Springfield shoots dead on. It is very accurate. In the right hands, it is very, very accurate. We had a competition with M16s at a shoot one time, and our muskets beat the M16s.
Wow.
Shot for shot. So the guns back then were very accurate.
But if M16 misses, they get...
Yeah, it takes a longer time to load. You could probably get 3 rounds off in a minute. I mean.
So is there a do you have a certain number of shots per round or per turn or per tournament? When I was doing riflery as a kid, we had 5 shots on a paper target.
Yeah.
What's your breakdown? How many shots do you get or turns do you get?
Well, we go to a competition, and it's hard to explain it, but they have a big stanchion out in the field. You're probably about 50 yards away. On there are clay pigeons mounted on a board. There are probably 8 rows of clay pigeons. On a team, there are 8 men. So it is a timed event, and you have to shoot your particular pigeon within that time. And if you finish yours, you go to the next guys and help him out. So the closest one to finishing, or the least amount of time, actually wins that event.
Okay. And this is this interest in shooting. It sounds like so much of it for you is in the history and in the costume.
Yeah.
Do you also shoot with sidearms at a regular shooting range?
Some guys do. They have a Springfield, or let's see, an Army model or a Navy model Colt, and for pistols, and they have their own competition that probably 25 yards away.
You're describing this is,
if I can find one, I don't know if I still have it. Oh, I got it hidden away here in my cabaret. This is a holster.
Okay.
That I made. This is the pistol.
Okay. And when does
Whoa.
when does that date to?
Oh, this is a reproduction.
Okay. The original, when's the original from?
About 1862, 63. It's a 44 caliber I think Army model.
Okay. But you don't shoot with modern or new weapons.
No.
You have not gone out to like a gun club or a shooting range to shoot with like a 9mm Beretta or whatever. Okay.
No. I don't even want to be near one.
Okay. So this sounds like for you, the hobby is very much in the history of it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I was always interested in history, and that's why I did the things I did. I mean, I've got things from that period here. I have original belts from the American Civil War here. I have Civil War swords hanging up on the wall. I have several muskets, things like that. But I like it. I like the older period rather than
I think I've
modern.
seen on another interview, just to your right, your wall is covered in military headgear and swords. Am I remembering correctly?
Let me see.
So,
There they are.
helmets,
Oh yeah.
caps.
Yeah, you can see the headgear up there I have. If I turn this
wow.
way, you can see my musket hanging up on the wall, up on the beam up there.
Oh wow. Okay, so hanging under that beam, I see an airplane.
Yeah.
That's a model you built, right?
No, actually, it's a toy.
Oh, okay. But you
Is
are you a model builder? Have you built models of tanks and planes?
No,
Okay. So
that's a F4U Corsair, World War II. That's from It's a company. What's the name of the company? I can't even think of it. But I have a Spitfire and I have a P-51 as well, or Messerschmitt 109. And those were 20th century toys. I think I was. They're no longer in business.
So if I think of painting miniatures of soldiers,
Just talking about.
oh yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, just talking about the Civil War reenactments, just put me to mind of Cross Country. That obviously he has got quite a significant Civil War influence on him. I guess maybe as a prompt, what can you remember about
I did that
designing Cross Country and adding in?
I did that purposely. I put a Civil War kepi on them. I think I put a belt plate on them, and yeah, I think that's supposed to be Guy Cassidy, a friend of mine at work.
And the second version of Cross Country is also in a Civil War inspired costume, and maybe even more so. Mark, do you want to pull that one up? Is that from 93, I think?
Yeah, I can get back to that actually. I think back. But I don't think that one was Ron. I think the version 2.
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry.
I believe.
Although that might raise the question.
But yeah, definitely carried on the.
Yes, that's a good point. So Ron, this is not you. I know this is after you stopped designing figures. I think what I'm asking is, did you, while you were still at Hasbro but no longer designing G.I. Joe, did you ever go back and do a little bit of work on a figure?
Yeah, I think I did. I worked on Steel Brigade. So I did the Steel Brigade figure.
Okay. And I have some drawings from when I visited you at your studio.
Yeah.
You gave me a photocopy of some drawings of the Star Brigade figures.
Yeah.
So to my mind, after you stopped your solid years of figure designing, you did go back and create some looks for the, what is this, Mark? Is Star Brigade 92, 93? Ron, you did some of the astronauts when there was a team of astronauts.
Yeah. I was asked to help. I think it was Kurt Groen,
right,
at the time, and he needed some help, and so I was willing to do anything for, doing another Joe.
So when you, after your 6 or so years of designing Joe figures, right?
Yeah.
It's 82 to 87. Do I have that right?
Till about the middle of 87.
Okay.
And then Mark Pennington took over.
So Ron, was it your idea to stop designing Joe, or was it someone else's idea?
No, it was basically my idea because I felt I had more imagination to do other product. And I don't, I kind of wish I had stayed on, but still it is starting to get pretty hard coming up with the different figures to do. And yeah, it was all my idea to come off.
So what are some products you worked on after G.I. Joe while you were still at Hasbro?
Yeah, well, I worked on one product that never even got made. So I worked on that for over a year with an engineer, and that never happened.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was a figure that, I don't know, I had some kind of liquid inside of it. And the figure had a plunger on the top of its head that was made into a helmet or a camera or something like that, and you pull up the plunger, and the whole figure would just be liquid inside. It never worked out, so we just never produced it.
And I take it that
You also,
sorry, go for it, Mark.
I was going to say, you also went on to work on WWF. Was that was after G.I. Joe, was it?
Yeah, I worked on
Wrestling.
WWF for a while until the line was basically canceled. I wasn't the only one. There were probably 3 other designers working on WWF as well. But yeah, I did quite a few figures for WWF, and I'm still doing wrestling figures for another guy right now.
Who's that, and how's that going?
And that's going pretty good. Every now and then he'll send me a figure to do. I'm waiting. He promised me 2 weeks ago that he would give me Bruce Lee because he got the rights to it, and I haven't received it yet, so I'm just waiting. I did a figure for him. Yeah, 2 weeks ago I did a figure for him of a wrestler. I think he's using my name and my designs to promote this stuff. You know, he's saying, "Oh, these are produced by the legend toy maker Ron Rudat," and he puts it on every package of his. So, he's using my name and to promote his stuff.
Yeah, you're a legend. If I can, if you got it, flaunt it. If I could return to something that we were talking about earlier, we were talking about your studio space, and I had this photo.
That was it.
That was
my old studio, the studio at Hasbro.
So this was your work area in Hasbro itself.
Yeah.
So did they let you have your TV on when you were working in the Hasbro office?
Actually, yeah. I mean, not this one,
Wow.
but another office I had. I had a little black and white TV and sitting right beside my desk, and I'd be watching TV and I'd be working.
Had this photo too. Is this in your attic, in your loft?
Yeah, that's my studio. Yeah, I got a different TV now.
So, Mark, I have so many more questions, but I feel like I've been hogging the mic, so I want to give you some space if you've got more. But seeing these images,
one of my
go for it.
If you've got a question prompted by this image, do you want to ask it, Tim, while we're on it?
Ron, can you describe the atmosphere and the feeling at Hasbro of working in a space like this with the coworkers you had?
Yeah, the atmosphere was good at Hasbro at that time. We had a lot of fun in there. We joked around with each other, and and only times it got serious was when we had a meeting with our managers, and or when there was a presentation coming up and we had to present to management. Those were the only serious times we had. But we've had like brainstorming meetings outside of the building. We would go to one of the big parks, and it'd be a brainstorming meeting all day long, just trying to come up with new ideas for toys, and yeah, I mean, the president at that time, was Stephen Hassenfeld, and he took the entire R&D department to the Marble House in Newport, Rhode Island, and had a big dinner there. We all dressed up in tuxedos, and our wives were in gowns, and and it was him thanking us for doing what we did. We would have I don't know, little powder puff games, I guess. I don't know, kidding around with each other, throwing stuff at each other. The camaraderie was there, and the creativeness was there. And we did everything by hand. It wasn't that on a computer like they're doing now. I recently went into Hasbro, probably, I'd say a couple months ago, and I saw what they've done to the building. I don't care for it, but that's the way they do it now. R&D is pretty messy in there right now. It's kind of a disaster. They got stuff in the hallways stacked up. They got big tables in the middle section where we used to design outside our cubes. It's totally different than when we had it. I mean, we respected the building and everything like that, but the camaraderie there was always great with us, with our team and the people I worked with.
It sounds like a collaborative environment. Like, would you go down and visit? So you're doing, the R&D and the initial design, but would you go down and visit the people doing like the sculpting of the figures and see how they were getting
all
on?
All the time.
Things.
Yeah. If I was designed a figure, and one of our sculptors got it, I would go down there and I'd check it and I'd look at it and do a lot of the aesthetic stuff. I would tell them this is not the way it's supposed to be, that it's supposed to be this way or whatever. And I'd always check. And sometimes you talk to an engineer and to make sure things are fitting correctly and stuff like that. I would get things in from Hong Kong and make sure that figure was what I'm looking for and everything like that. And always working with people all the time.
If I can add,
did you ever get hands-on and do, when in the sculpting process, did you ever get hands-on and sort of have a little like tweak yourself, like have a go at seeing how that process worked hands off?
I wasn't allowed to touch them after. No.
But the fact that you would walk down the hallway and talk to a sculptor and point to something, I think speaks to sort of almost that much of a connection. And if I can add a little bit of context, I think as G.I. Joe fans, we either are sort of continually remembering this or we forget and take it for granted that when Ron was working on G.I. Joe was a sales juggernaut, and Hasbro had several other hit lines like Transformers and My Little Pony. And so, so on the one hand, sales were great and people were getting hired to make more product and more product lines, as a contrast to some other toy company that was much smaller or didn't have any hits or had modest hits that weren't on television. And at the same time, I imagine there was then this pressure every year. It's like, well, last year we did great sales. What do you got for me this year?
And
I mean, that's I imagine sort of your bosses might have been asking you or nudging you. The expectation was, okay, sales were great last year. Sales need to be even better or great this year. And so on the one hand, you could take pride in knowing that you had a hit, you had a number 1 or number 2 line, but also the pressure to keep it up.
Yeah, well, there was pressure to keep it up, but it wasn't wasn't basically our idea. It was basically marketing telling us what they're looking for. It's you know, and they would say they would need a vehicle at a such and such a price point, and our guys would go and come up with some rough designs on what they think they should be looking at, and we would go from there. I had a lot of freedom in doing the figures. I could do almost anything I wanted to, and so that's what I did. Most of my ideas, they came from my head. I mean, I've used reference and stuff like that to design the figures, but yeah, as far as coming up with the next great hit, we never know. We don't know what the great next hit's going to be.
Right, of course.
No.
Was like the kickoff point for any given wave of was it that you all got together and had this brainstorming session and you had a list of things to explore? Or
yeah, well, in my case, we would have a brainstorm meeting and to figure out what kind of figure we want to do. We just had working titles on everything. Like I'm trying to think of an example. Like a bazooka soldier or something like that.
Yeah, like or
working
like, come up with a snare, for example.
Yeah.
Something
Well,
like
he came with a vehicle, didn't he? Yeah.
The other bearded Arctic guy came with a vehicle.
Yeah.
It was Frostbite that came with the.
Yeah. Well, Winter Soldier, just say Winter Soldier. And from there, you just create what you think a Winter Soldier looks like.
And some of this is pairing what the Joes are going to have versus what Cobra is going to have. That one year, maybe there's going to be a Joe vehicle that is sort of the same shape or sort of the same price as a Cobra vehicle so that they can kind of do battle. Or if there's going to be an underwater vehicle, there's also going to be an underwater guy. Or if there's going to be an underwater vehicle for the Joes, there's going to be an underwater vehicle for the Cobras, so that each year suggests certain play patterns for kids.
Yeah.
And that's defined by marketing, and then you're filling in the gaps. Like, okay, well,
pretty much. Yeah.
Some kind of plane or flying thing that's $8.
Yeah.
And that might be a little one-person helicopter. It might be a hang glider jetpack. It might be a tiny, tiny plane. You had mentioned meetings before where every so often you would go in and present your work to the higher ups. And there were different levels of those meetings, right? You might show your work to just your immediate supervisor in R&D, and then there might be a later meeting where R&D is presenting all of its work to the vice presidents. Is that right? There are these tiers of sort of like making it to the next round.
I don't remember having to do different tiers or anything like that. I would do the drawings of the figures that we're going to do for the coming year. And we would have one major presentation. And that would be not just to the president of the company, but it would be to all the marketing people and the sales people and whoever else was in that meeting. There could be 20 people in there that you're presenting to. And you would get up in front of them, and which I hated with a passion. And you just present to them, and you would find out after the presentation more or less what figures you're going to do. Yeah, that's basically how it worked.
Yeah.
I hated presentations. I'm not one to get up in
I
front
heard
of
a, I
people.
heard,
You know, I'm not wanting to get up in front of people and talk. You know, I was seen as a very quiet guy at Hasbro. So when I got up there, I got very nervous. I lost my train of thought, um, on what I was going to say and everything. So it didn't do me any good. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard from previous stories from a couple of people. I think that they're piecing together the story. It sounds like it was a presentation for the gung ho blues dress or a Marine's blue dress, and Stephen Schwartz didn't like it and tore it in half. I might be piecing it together wrong.
I don't think it was gung ho. It was another figure, and Steve Schwartz took
Okay.
one of my drawings and just ripped it in half, which was not the thing to do. No one liked Steve. I mean,
Makes it a bit more stressful to be, right?
He was head of sales, right? VP of sales.
He was head of the marketing department.
VP of marketing. Okay, excuse me.
Vice president of marketing.
Ron, you designed a couple vehicles along the way for G.I. Joe, right?
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
In
broad strokes, because designing a vehicle is different than designing a figure.
Yeah. What's the name of the vehicle he designed?
The Moray?
Well, I did the
hydrofoil Moray.
Yeah, I did the hydrofoil Moray. I designed that. I still have the drawing here at home that
One of my favorites.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Thunder Machine.
Yep.
I did that one. It's got my street a number on it. Did you know that?
No.
Is that there?
Yeah, 169. 169 is my street number.
So can you talk about approaching a vehicle and how that's different from approaching a figure?
Not really. I mean, you just start doing rough sketches of what you want, and that's basically it. I don't know. It's like designing a figure. You just start drawing them and see what you come up with. I did Triple T as well for Sergeant Slaughter.
And did you also do? Did you do Serpentor's Air Chariot?
Yeah, I did Serpentor's Air Chariot and Serpentor.
So I guess what I'm asking, if it sounds like you don't see the approach as different because both of them just involve thinking and drawing and experimenting. Maybe what I'm asking about is figures are going to be organic shapes. They're going to have clothing and a different arrangement and sort of vocabulary of accessories like a pocket or a knife or some medals and hair and a facial expression. And a vehicle is static and it's mechanical.
You're right.
And so in that regard, drawing a character in a pose or who has personality, even if they're going to be sculpted in a straight pose, is different than the angles on an airplane or the flat edges on a tank.
Yeah, pretty much.
So does that sound familiar, or do you have any sort of reaction or correction to that?
Yeah. I don't tell you on that. the direction is certainly different. You know, you're doing a figure, and it's like you say, it's organic, and doing a vehicle. You know, you just start doing rough sketches of it and what you think it might look like, and yeah, and then you just start drawing it. Basically, the Maury came from watching the Miami Vice, basically. Hey, remember they were always in that speedboat, and that's basically where the Maury came from.
Okay.
I did the one-man helicopter there for Cobra.
The Fang.
The Fang, yeah, I did the Fang. That idea basically came from James Bond. You remember James Bond, and he was trying to get away, and he got into this little airplane and flew off. It was like a little jet.
Right.
You know, he took off. Yeah, the idea for that came from there. I don't know. I don't remember where Triple T came from. I also did the Pack Rats. I did all three of the Pack Rats.
And I think the Pogo might have been yours as well. Is that right?
The what?
Pogo.
Oh,
The bouncing ball.
You know, I can't remember if I did that or someone else did it.
And
I don't recall.
Didn't the Thunder Machine take some inspiration from Mad Max?
Oh, yeah. The Thunder Machine came basically from Mad Max. Yeah. Yeah, it did. And I hear that there's
great.
Yeah, somebody
great
built
hodgepodge of different vehicles all together.
Somebody built one of those for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere out in the Midwest of the country.
I could. It may be too late. I could send you the photo I took at the JoeCon in Loveland, Colorado.
Oh, really?
And you could put it. Or you two talk for 30 seconds. I'll find this photo. I'll send it to you, Mark, and you can pull it up.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask about was that the mask behind your over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Ron, what's that mask? It looks like possibly something that Zartan would have. There we go. Zartan in his little backpack. Yeah. It's got that little teeny tiny little face.
Yeah.
But
no, that's something I did at work for fun one day. I had one of the other designers take some dentist alginate. You know how they make impressions of your mouth? Well, I laid down on a table and he poured this stuff all over my face. And I basically made a mold. And I just had it cast in, with body putty. And then I painted it. Yeah. That's me back in the day.
From far away, when it was still hanging behind you, it looks like the little mask that comes with the original Zartan figure that you place over his face so that it sort of looks like he's disguised as Shipwreck.
Yeah. It got it dated too, 5/20/83.
Wow.
I was 34 and a half years old.
83.
Yeah.
So, Ron,
it's interesting. You said that you thought Zartan's face was meant to be Shipwreck. I don't think I'd ever made that connection. Do you have a memory of who that masked man is?
No, it just made up.
I might be if Shipwreck is in the TV commercial for the Zartan toy, right? Where's Zartan?
Maybe.
I don't know any Zartan.
Yeah.
It might have been me making a connection that wasn't necessarily there.
No, there's no connection.
Yeah, he's such an unusual design. What can you think? What were you? What was the springboard for Zartan?
There's nothing. I just made them up. I don't know. The see-through thing was Kurt Bazigian saying we got to have something funky with this figure. So that's why the clear shield on them, and I think it changed color, didn't it? Yeah, that was a Kurt Bazigian. Yeah, but rest of the figure is mine. I just
the facial
made them up.
I guess Kiss, the band Kiss must have been quite popular at the time, so I don't know if all their makeup might have been part of the melting pot.
No, not as far as I know.
Ron, in those years that you were designing figures, the G.I. Joe line was so big, and every year or so you were also designing a vehicle. For part of the year, were you working on other projects at Hasbro, or were you only on G.I. Joe?
At that time, I was only on G.I. Joe. I mean, it took a long time to do figures. You come up with a design, and then you come up with a presentation drawing, and then you go to color, and then you go to sculptural input, and and it just goes on and on and on. And then as soon as that line is finished, you go on to the next one.
Right.
So I only worked on figures at the time. I'm doing the same thing right now with the Carson's figures.
Yeah. Can you talk about Carson Metaxas's Operation Recall?
Yeah, he's doing Operation Recall, and it's basically to do figures the same way we did them when we worked at Hasbro. And he's gonna come out with 3 3/4 inch figures, and their design is based off of the fans that love G.I. Joe. That's basically what we're doing, and you can see that the picture you just showed up there is some of the rough sketches I did, and then the sculptural input, and that's based off of a figure that he presented to Hasbro when he was 10 years old. And so, he wanted to, reproduce that figure from when he was 10. And, that's when I came up with all this stuff. And he went through a review with Kurt Bazigian, and he stated what he thought it should be. And here's all the corrections Kurt did. And I'm basically doing the same exact thing right now. I'm working on a figure right now of one of the figures. And I want to get these drawings done at ASAP, because I've got 8 of them I got to do. And it's not, I won't be able to finish it until next year. It takes a long time, and I did rough drawings, and the Kurt went in, and Carson had to get Kurt to go over the figures and draw out what he wanted to see added, and so now I got to take. Carson sent these to me a couple of weeks ago, and maybe a month ago. I can't really remember. But I waited quite a while before I even got my drawings back with the corrections. And now I got to go in and do a finished drawing of the figure. And as soon as I get all these done, then I got to send them off to Carson, and And I'll probably have to do color studies of these, and after color studies, I'm going to have to do sculptural input of these. And it's not just me, it's Mark Pennington, because Mark Pennington has 8 figures as well to do. I think he's got more time on his hands than I do, though.
And then Bill Merkline is sculpting the figures.
Yeah, Bill Merkline's sculpting the figures.
And he was a freelance sculptor who did a bunch of Joes in the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
He was not in Rhode Island. He was not in-house.
No, Bill's in New York. And we had a couple of guys on the outside work on figures, and Bill was one of them. And there was another guy. He was from Peru or Chile or something like that. I can't think of his name. He is an outstanding sculptor as well. But right now it's mainly Bill. So.
Well, I have backed this Kickstarter, and I am tickled that both specifically Carson gets his childhood action figure design made real and in a classic way, and also other fans who have sort of joined in, they get their fan designs made as figures.
Yeah.
Ron, part of why I asked about if you had time in the schedule to work on other products at Hasbro besides G.I. Joe is that I believe I have a drawing of yours or I've seen an image of a Cops vehicle, the Cops and Crooks toy line.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was wondering if you had any recollections of that toy line. I know that Bart Sears was the main designer on that.
Yeah.
But do you remember contributing sort of just once or a little bit? Because there were, I think, 2 years of the toy, and then there was a third year that didn't happen. Do you remember how you contributed to Cops?
I think I only did one thing on that, and that was a vehicle.
Okay.
There was a vehicle that had all these louvers on the front of it, and I think that's the only thing I worked on.
Okay. And then while we're talking about the toy lines that aren't a real American hero, you got to Hasbro in the 70s.
Yeah, 71.
71. So as long as you worked on a real American hero, you spent more years than that before it happened working on other things at Hasbro. So I feel like when you were telling us about how it felt and how the camaraderie was at Hasbro, and we were looking at that photo of your desk, I feel like that may have been about the 1980s. How was Hasbro in the 70s when you got there? You were younger, you didn't have the experience, there were different toy lines. What was that like, and what did you do?
I worked in the art department for 7 years, and I would basically doing a lot of instructional art. Some finished art, not much, but I also corrected illustrations that came in. There's a 12-inch G.I. Joe package that has a vehicle in it with a Joe, and it's in the desert, and they wanted to wipe something out on that illustration, so I had to go in there with some gouache paint and get rid of that particular thing. I did some accessories. I did some illustrations on accessories, like the sled that has the sail on it. I did that illustration. I'm not sure what else I worked on.
So in my sort of reading of Hasbro history, Hasbro got put on the map in with Mr. Potato Head, but Hasbro really got put on the map in 1964 with G.I. Joe, and then Hasbro had this big hit again with G.I. Joe in 82 and Transformers in 84. But it feels like to me that Hasbro in the 70s, when The 12-inch Adventure Team was getting released, and we keep focusing on action figures, but Hasbro had all these other toys, some games, activity kits, dolls, sort of role play for little kids, like kitchen
Right.
sets. So can you talk about some of those lines or products in the 70s that wasn't the 12-inch GI Joe?
Oh, jeez.
Or in general, your sense of, I know I'm reaching back here, but
Yeah, my memory is not all that great. So
okay.
I worked on a lot of the activity sets that they had, arts and crafts things, like
Okay.
stuff like that.
Well,
And-
let me ask a different question
One
then,
of-
because you
One of
said
the things that one of the thing
you said that
one of the things that you should get is Weebles Wobble.
What is it?
Weebles Wobble.
Oh, yeah.
Weebles wobble,
wanna
but
say-
they don't fall down.
Yeah, I worked on that too. I did a lot of the artwork for the Weebles, and along with other people.
So when you get to Hasbro in 1971 and you worked in the art department for 7 years. So
Yep.
for someone who doesn't know how toy companies work, how is the art department different than the R&D, the research and design department?
Well, the art department is they're the people creating all the packaging and all the instructional stuff and things like that. It's way different than R&D, because R&D people are coming up with the ideas for the product and have nothing to do with packaging or any of the artwork or anything like that. So
And R&D is working with and taking direction from the marketing department,
correct.
because together they're inventing the lines and the products.
Yeah.
Whereas the art department comes a step later, right? Like, okay, this toy is going to need instructions. We'll draw the instructions, or we'll do the typography and the art for the instructions, right?
Yeah.
So were the people who you worked with, so you made the transition from the art department to the R&D department. Did the other people in the art department, did they want to move?
They were
in the
not.
company?
I was the only one asked.
You were asked. Okay, so was this a promotion up, or was this a promotion sideways?
No, I'd say it was a promotion up for me. They asked me if I wanted to join the R&D department, and I said, well, would I get a little bit more money if I do that? And they said, yeah, you would. And I said, okay, I'll join the R&D department.
And was the art department small or large compared to the R&D department?
At that time, it was very, very small.
The art department was small.
The art department was very, very small. R&D was very, very small.
Okay.
We were based in Central Falls in a old factory building.
Not in Pawtucket.
No.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was small. The R&D was very small. I can't tell you how many people in there. Probably maybe 10 people, if that. Our department was basically the same way. We maybe 6 people.
Yeah, there was a great panel at the, I think, second to last Joe Con, and it was on Hasbro in the 70s, and there was a photograph of the arts department, I think. Maybe it was the R&D department in like 1974, and it was 6 people. And I know that 2 or 3 people, 1 or 2 people were missing from the photo.
Right.
And for our listeners and viewers, where Ron is describing these 2 small departments, I think the big change is 1982 when G.I. Joe takes off and the R&D department gets bigger, because the G.I. Joe line needs more product. And then, and there's My Little Pony and Transformers and Visionaries and etc.
Well, you know, when we were in Central Falls, there weren't that.
Was there?
And you said a photograph of the R&D department. It was separated. You know, there was one room here and one room here. This room had maybe 6 people. This one had 4 people. You know, and we had a sculptor in there too, one sculptor, and yeah, I mean, very small. The same way when I was in the art department, there were probably 5 people on one side of the department and 4 others on the other side. So, you know, we were separated. It was very small, you know.
And so 7 years after you got to Hasbro, do I have that number right? You got promoted from the arts department to the R&D department?
Yeah.
And is that when you moved to Pawtucket, or did that happen at a different time?
Let me see. No, I was still in Central Falls when I went there. When I went to R&D.
When did you go from Central Falls to Pawtucket?
Well, they were renovating the buildings over in Pawtucket, and we ended up in an old Stop and Shop building.
Okay.
Which is now corporate headquarters.
Is it? I'm remembering a different. Is it not Stop and Shop? Is it A&P? A&P,
maybe.
A grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was R&D in that entire building, along with marketing. And then I'm not sure how many years later, maybe 3 or 4 years later, we moved across the street to the main factory building. When, you know, they totally redid the whole building, and we had one whole side of the building. We ended up eventually having about 170 R&D people. That's including sculpting and everything else that was in there. All the various different departments, boys, girls, you know, whatever. And that was
play school for little kids.
Play school was in a separate part of the building. You know, art department was another separate part of the building. But all your creatives were in that one building. And I'm not sure if marketing, I'm not sure if marketing was there or not. They had to be, though, probably in the front of the building.
Was there a cafeteria?
Yeah, there's a big cafeteria there. The big main hallway that runs down the center of the building. It's all different now.
Okay, but then how was the food?
Food wasn't bad because they hired a chef to come in. Yeah.
What would you have for lunch?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever there was there.
Okay.
Sometimes I didn't have lunch.
Because you were on a deadline?
Well, because maybe I wanted to do my own artwork, or sometimes I would just run out of the building and get something down the street.
Right.
You know? So we had an hour for lunch, so it wasn't bad.
Were there particular shops or places to get food near the Hasbro building where you might go for art supplies or a turkey sandwich or markers? Okay.
No. If I wanted art supplies, I would have to go into Providence.
Okay.
If I wanted to get something to eat, I'd have to go probably half a mile down the street.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's not close to much at all.
Yeah, it's from Pawtucket to Providence. It's a 15-minute drive, right? Down North Main Street.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or you can take 95, I guess.
Yeah, take 95, or I can take the back way. No, 152. So. But yeah. So.
Was there any sort of friendly rivalry between the different teams? Oh, sorry, I'm moving on to a different topic. Sorry, Tim.
No rivalry. none whatsoever. We all got along pretty well. You know, nobody was mean to anyone. So I don't know if you could say that about bosses, but yeah, it was overall.
What have been brands like G.I. Joe and Transformers?
Well, I had nothing to do with the Transformers. I did do some rough sketches for Manimals, but that's about it.
I have also heard from people who worked on Transformers that Transformers was a different structure because the toys were designed in Japan. And so it was a smaller team in the States, and there were other or different or fewer decisions being made, like color schemes and names and packaging. And there was still back and forth on the designs. There was art made on Transformers, but it was a smaller team because effectively the other half of the team was in Japan at Takara. Ron,
I had these
yeah, go
couple
for
of. I had these couple of photos here from. This is from Yo Joe. That I sourced these from, but these I guess from like R&D trips that you were taking as a team to go and see what was happening with the real life military.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
definitely got the inspiration for the bridge layer there. Can you tell us a little bit about those trips?
Yeah, that was just a research trip. We went to Cape Cod, Camp Edwards. That's at the beginning of Cape Cod. That's a training camp for Army and Air Force. Connected to, you can see the bridge layer there, and that's Greg Bernstein standing there. And he actually built the G.I. Joe bridge layer. The other picture with a tank, that's Wayne Luther. And I think that might have been the tank that I had my picture taken in. I'm not sure, but we would do research trips all the time. You know, we went over to Otis Air Force Base, which is connected to Camp Edwards, and we got to, see a F-14 or F-15 close up, and helicopters and whatever. It was a fun trip. We got to ride in an APC, which is an armored personnel carrier. We all piled into the inside of it, and they took us around their course they have there. Of course, you can't see out, so you're just bouncing all over the place. Greg Bernstein and I went to Quonset Naval Base, which was in Rhode Island, and they were had two aircraft carriers there, and we went inside one of the aircraft carriers, and Greg was taking a lot of pictures of the inside to see the structure and everything. That he used for the USS Flag that Greg built. There are other shows that were out there, things I didn't get a chance to go to, but others did. They had an armor show or a weapons show in Las Vegas, and I know some of the guys went out there to see that and see what the latest was in weaponry. And those are all things that we got ideas from. So
these trips were a couple times a year for several years, right?
Yeah. So a lot of the shows I didn't get a chance to go to, but marketing people went to these shows too, and it's like, I don't know how useful it was to them because they weren't designing anything. So, but they tend to take up those trips.
But Wayne Luther was the head of R&D, is that right? And Greg Bernstein And Greg Brinson was later the head of R&D, but both of these guys worked on vehicles.
Yeah. I'm not sure what Wayne's position was here. He was like,
I'm going to look it up because I have it on my computer. You keep talking.
I think he was vice president of boys at the time in R&D. Greg Bernstein was just a manager at Hasbro on the GI Joe line. He wasn't a head of it, but he was a manager.
And you mentioned going to the gun shows. Am I right in thinking that you designed some of the accessories, but often that was handed out to someone who specialized specifically in designing some of the accessories?
Will you say that again? I didn't quite hear you on that.
I was saying that you talked about going to the gun shows and seeing the latest weaponry and stuff, but when you were designing the figures and the accessories that went with them, so the toy
Right.
guns and the backpacks and all these kind of things, would you normally do those as well, or would someone else typically pick up that activity of designing the accessories?
I basically did the design on all the weapons. They would be some of them would be based on real life weapons, but we didn't want to copy them exactly, to real world weaponry. So a lot of some of those I made up. They look similar to actual, but they're not.
I have on my I have a flow chart for 1981 for my book at Hasbro. I have that Wayne Luther was project manager on GI Joe under Steve DeGuano, but I will admit that this organizational chart may be incorrect, and certainly people change position over time.
Yeah.
But both those two guys photographed with tanks did work on GI Joe vehicles. Greg Bernstein, sort of famously, Greg Bernstein's a train guy, and he designed the GI Joe train.
Train?
Yeah, it's Tycho, right? The scale model train.
Oh, I have no idea. I know it was a hobby of Greg's to build some of these flatbed rail cars and other box cars and things. It was a hobby of his, so he knew what he was doing on those. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't remember seeing it.
Ron, what was your final year at Hasbro?
In 1999, December 7th. A day that will live in infamy.
I hesitate to inquire more specifically about that day, but
Pearl Harbor Day.
What were some projects you were working on in the final year or two in broader strokes?
Oh, I can't remember what I was working on. I know towards the end I was like a in-house freelancer. I could work for any department within Hasbro. If somebody needed help on a certain thing, I would help out. I was also in the girls department towards the end, which probably did me in.
What do you mean?
I don't think the director of the girls group really liked me that much. I was the only male figure in the girls department. All the rest were all girls. So I don't know. That's when I left Hasbro. being in the girls group. It was pretty disappointing.
So you are a landscape painter.
Yeah, pretty much.
Are there any paintings within arm's reach that you could grab and hold up to the camera?
No.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, Mark's got that covered. If you look at the screen. So were you painting landscapes when you were at Hasbro, or did that start after?
And this all started after I left.
And what is it about? So painting a landscape, to me, is completely different than product design, whether that's a person or a tank or a little horse or a doll. What is it about landscape painting that interests you?
Oh, because it's so different, you know. It's just something I enjoy doing. I mean, there are so many different, places to go and paint, and and it's something I really enjoy doing. Eventually, I learned how to paint on copper, which is a method that goes back to the 16th century. Many paintings were done on copper at that time. And so I wanted to try that.
What is the difference between painting on copper versus paper or canvas?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain that too, because you paint on copper with oil paint or sometimes acrylic, but with oil paint, supposedly the colors that you put down on copper over the years will eventually get richer and richer in color, and it's due to, I guess, to oxidation or whatever. But 16th century paintings are still around, and they're on copper. But
So,
not a lot of people know about painting on copper, and it is a method that goes back like 400 or 500 years.
I feel like there's a connection or a parallel between you being interested in painting in a technique that goes back several hundred years and you being interested in military costumes that go back several hundred years.
Yeah.
Even if you're not painting those costumes. So these landscapes, right? I see prominent props like a vehicle or a chair or a bicycle, but I don't see people. I don't see portraits.
Yeah, I don't do portraits.
When you are painting a landscape, are you doing it open air? Are you there? Are you doing it in your studio?
No, I'm doing it mostly in my studio. I did some plein air work at a couple of workshops, but that's about it. I don't get outside that much. I'm mainly in my studio where it's nice and quiet and I can think. And it's too many distractions out there.
So you go there and you take a photo and then you go home and you're working from your photo reference?
Pretty much, yeah.
Are you tending to paint exactly what's in the photo, or are you adding things or changing things?
I'm mainly painting exactly what's in the photo. If there's something I don't like in the photo, then I take it out.
Okay.
You'll see that you see this painting here with the bicycle in the snow. You just had it up there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a made-up painting.
That is not a photo of a place you went.
No, most of these are. I can name where all these are.
Yeah, tell us.
The one with you see the sunflowers up there.
Yeah,
that's down in P-Town.
Okay.
Okay, then the truck that's down in Southwick, Massachusetts. I was driving one day and I went by this old truck and I had to stop and take a picture of it. And the one next to that is up on Monhegan Island. Yeah, there was just a chair sitting out there with them. The next truck was in a place near here. The guy's got a whole bunch of different vehicles in his backyard or out in his front yard near a vegetable stand. The one with the boat, that's down in Sandwich, Mass. That's a low tide. So, I can basically name where all these are.
All right. So I know a little bit about the differences between oil paint, acrylic, tempera, and watercolor. It sounds like oil is your preference.
Pretty much when I do these, yeah, it's oil.
Okay.
And I have to teach myself because I've never worked in oils before.
Up until relatively recently.
Up until maybe 10 years ago.
When you mentioned working in the art department at Hasbro in Cedar Falls, I think you mentioned making a correction on a painting in gouache.
Yeah.
So
I never worked in gouache before. I had a hard time with it. I still do it though. I have some gouache paint here that I used on something I had done recently.
So what would make you decide recently to use gouache for that and not oil or acrylic?
I figured the oil would take me a lot longer to do. That's why I did it in gouache.
Okay.
Gouache is almost like a watercolor. And I mean, that's what you mix it with. You're not mixing with turfs or anything like that. You're using water as your vehicle. So made it a little bit easier to do.
And where, for instance, you've been doing G.I. Joe painted commissions of a character, would that be using gouache?
Sometimes I'd use gouache. Other times I'd use marker. I have markers here too, so I use markers as well.
Marker is probably the easiest of all of them, right?
Yeah, I can get a colored rendering done pretty quick, but it's pen and ink and marker.
I have never worked in oil, but the one thing I know about oil, and this speaks to you describing it taking a long time, is that oil takes a very long time to dry. And so you paint one layer and then you wait a day or a week, and then you paint another layer and you wait. But
not always.
Not always. Okay. But compared to acrylic, which
acrylic is immediately almost.
Yeah. And acrylic dries as plastic, and acrylic is much more opaque, right?
Right.
Whereas in oil, particularly if you're layering, it's translucent.
If you use acrylic like you use watercolor, you can build up layers.
Okay. Do you paint in watercolor?
I used to.
Why'd you stop?
I don't know. I used to do a lot of watercolors years and years ago, and I don't know. I just stopped working on watercolors. I have one watercolor painting at Wheaton College that they bought from me, and that's probably one of the better pieces I've ever done. So,
I took a summer class once in watercolor, and the teacher sort of had us all follow her step by step, and we all kind of made the same painting she made, a winter scene. Yeah. And I remember her saying, you sort of have one chance with watercolor. When it dries, that's sort of what you got. You can't really go back into it or over it. And I thought, maybe I'll go over it with like oil pastels or with gouache, which is not watercolor.
Yeah. My watercolors don't look like your typical watercolors. Okay. They're a little bit tighter.
Okay.
Except for the sky. The sky is always a wash. But the rest of it, I'm taking my time doing the watercolor. If it's a building or, or whatever, you know. The one I did sell to Wheaton College had a tobacco building with a lettering on the side of it, and then there was an old truck in front of that, and I had a barrel next to that, which had smoke coming out of it. So, you know.
So what is that painting that we can
where
kind of
do you-
see behind you?
Huh?
What's that painting behind you that
On
we
the-
can kind of see? Can you turn your chair around? There's a painting
floor,
on the
you mean?
floor.
Oh, here.
Yeah, Ron, there's a painting
Behind your
if you-
chair. Is that the one?
Yeah, what's that, Ron?
That's
Blue
Montego.
sky.
When did you do that?
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay.
It's been a while. Let me get up.
After this, Mark, I'll yield the mic back to you for a bit.
Was it the one behind the chair that you were talking about?
I think it is this one,
one
that
that-
Ron has grabbed.
Covered up, but oh right, okay.
I just sort of wanted any painting.
There was one. So you can see
It's
the
in,
blue just behind.
it's in Montego Island. It's a fishing shack on Montego Island.
And this is oil?
This is oil.
Is this on copper?
This one, I don't know.
Okay.
No. And here's another one. This one is on copper. Get the plastic off of this thing. Okay.
Oh. Wow.
Can you tell where that is?
It feels like Massachusetts, but I can't be more specific.
Motif number 1. Ring a bell?
Am I embarrassing myself not knowing something basic from art history?
It's in Massachusetts.
I give up, sir.
It's in Rockport, Mass.
Okay. I
And-
don't think I've been there. I know I should have by now.
And it's done on copper.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Okay. And then on this, you can see the copper coming through on the top and on the bottom.
Okay. Wow. Mark, I've been asking a lot of non-GI Joe questions, so I'm going to kind of pass the microphone back to you.
Yeah, I was going to ask sort of you were doing that sort of intensive GI Joe character design up to about 87 onto something, other elements at Hasbro for a while, and then more fine art, sort of painting, then coming back for the Operation Recall, where you're sort of back in that character design mode, just like you were in the early
Right.
80s. How is that experience? Is it just like riding a bike, or was it tricky getting back in that same kind of mindset?
No, it's kind of like riding a bike. I just feel, my drawings are different from Mark Pennington. Mark Pennington is a comic book artist. So he puts a lot of dramatization in his drawings. My drawings aren't quite like that. I sit there and I think about what this character is going to look like and what I should have on him. When Mark does it, he suggests what might be there. So you don't see what's in the final drawing. I'm not sure how he's doing his final drawings now, but he's got to start putting it in detail. and I started out with detail. I could show you. I'm working on a figure now for Recall, and she's called Damselfly. Okay, it's a character. She's a bad guy. She has missiles. She has wings on her back that fold out, and she basically does things in secret. So this is basically what she looks like. Okay.
Neat.
Cool.
That's one of the characters I'm working on right now. So she's almost done. Then as soon as I get that done, I get on to the next one. I got to figure out what that's going to be. Yeah.
It looked like you're sneaking in the skull motif there into the wings.
Yeah. Well, the skull design is basically it's on the wings, it's on her knife, it's on her belt, on her shoulder. That is her identification. So the skull mask will come off and reveal her real face. It's going to be a separate piece, and also her hair is going to be a separate piece. Yeah.
Ron, you have traveled to be a guest at some toy conventions,
Yeah.
G.I. Joe conventions. And there you get to interact with fans, sell prints of your art, do panels, and see people from Hasbro like Kirk or Mark.
Yeah.
How is that? How is it to be a guest at conventions?
Oh, I think it's great. I have a good time at the conventions. I'm not one of these guests who just, you do your thing at a convention and then you just go off to your room or go off somewhere. I intermingle with all the fans. I sit down. I have a smoke with them outside, and there could be about 8 guys out there, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff, and it's great. I feel like I'm one of the guys, one of the fans, and I want to be part of them. I don't want to be all smug and everything like that, and it's just me. I like that. Yeah.
And G.I. Joe has been this amazing, cultural phenomenon, and sort of certainly during the 80s, it was in the shops, it's on the TV, it's one of the biggest selling comics, and I guess for a lot of that, you're working on your own in the office, somewhat isolated from maybe some of what's happening externally. What was kind of your sense of I guess initially realizing quite how successful it was at the time, and then later on, kind of the impact that it's had on these people all of these years later? Yeah.
At the time, we had no idea the impact of what G.I. Joe was going to be. We just did our work and everything like that. I think within 2 years, we saw that the numbers went up on G.I. Joe, and everybody was excited about it, and we really didn't know at first, but it's just kind of exciting to see it do that, and the line kept on moving along, and it's still moving along. It just the impact of Joe today, is amazing to me, that there are so many collectors all around the world that collect G.I. Joe. It's just mind-boggling. I get messages from everybody. I just got one from a guy in Malta, of all places, and that's pretty cool. I got one from a guy in Spain and Australia, the Philippines, they're
It's
everywhere.
Yeah.
This hat came from a guy in Chile. So yeah, they send me stuff, and it's pretty cool.
Can I go back many steps further? Because Ron, we've been talking with you as someone who makes toys. What toys did you have when you were a kid?
None. I don't remember any.
Were you playing outside or with sports stuff? You just running around on a bike?
I was probably running around on a bike. I was also playing army with the kids out in the woods, using sticks for guns, and we try hiding, and the other guys would try looking for you and everything else. A lot of times they just took off, and I was in the woods by myself. So, as far as toys, all I remember is a pistol that my dad got for me. It was a Colt. It had a white pearl handle on it, and it was similar to my dad's real one that he had. But after a while, I didn't like it, and I traded it away for a rifle, for an air rifle. So that's about all I can remember is having toys. I think there's a picture of me with a train set, but I don't recall it too much.
You grew up in the 50s.
Yeah.
Did you have a bike?
Yeah. My grandmother bought me a bike.
And you grew up in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island?
Western Massachusetts.
Western Massachusetts. Okay. Because if your answer was New York City, I would ask about getting on the bus and the subway yourself and going and exploring the city. Were you on your own as a kid? Could you ride the bus, or was it just your neighborhood?
I just rode my bike around the neighborhood, basically. Just around the area. Yeah, I mean, not until high school that I started taking a bus to school, a city bus, and yeah, now that was it, basically.
Western Massachusetts is not as densely populated as Eastern Massachusetts.
No, it isn't.
I say this being in Eastern Massachusetts right now, where there's a couple subway stops a half mile away, and buses, and shops, and downtowns, and not skyscrapers necessarily, but some small downtowns.
Yeah, Western Mass. Back then, I'm not sure how many people were in our town. I'm from a town called Westfield, Mass, and yeah, it wasn't like overgrown or anything. There's a lot of farmland out there, and no, I used to take my wife out on dates all the time. We'd just drive out to nowhere, I did the same thing with my kids. We drive to nowhere, we just drive.
What did your parents do?
My dad worked in a factory. I don't know. He's a forklift driver. My mom worked in a place that sold I don't know, office supplies and stuff like that. I mean, neither one of them went to college.
Was there any sense that you might work in that factory or in that place that sold office supplies? You were going to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to be an artist.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I spent a lot of my time in my room at night or whatever. And I'd be drawing up there. Yeah.
Were you drawing from comic books?
No.
Out of your head?
Out of my head.
Did you read comic books?
No.
Interesting.
If anything, I think I remember going down to it was like a candy store, and they had used comics. And I would look for GI Combat, Sergeant Rock, stuff like that. Actually, I thought I was going to be a Marine, like my dad. I thought I was going to go into the military, at one point, and then I met my wife, and that changed everything. So, still married.
And you did go to visit Marvel Comics, didn't you? At some point in the 80s in New York.
Yeah, we went to meet at Marvel at one point. It was at the beginning of us working with Marvel to produce a comic book, and that's when I met Larry Hama. But there wasn't much going on there at that time. We just got to see some of the guys working in the office, and basically that was it.
Did you read the G.I. Joe comics when they came out? Did you take a look at them?
No.
Did you watch the cartoon?
What about what? Yeah.
What?
Did you watch the
went
TV
across
cartoon?
to the car?
No, I didn't watch cartoons either. I just don't. Nah, doesn't interest me at all.
But you did get across to visit Sunbow in California as well, right?
I don't remember going to Sunbow. I did go to California to I forgot the name of the company. It was an animation company, but I don't think it was Sunbow. I can't think of the name of the place. Hanna-Barbera. We went to Hanna-Barbera. We went there on a tour, and they showed us throughout the building. And then they said if I wanted to come back anytime, I could. So at one point, I took my wife and kids out to California for a vacation, and we stopped in at Hanna-Barbera. And they were very gracious, and they took us around. I got to meet Joe Barbera, and he had Michael Jackson's coat from one of his videos there, and he put the coat on my son. My son was totally thrilled, and he had an Oscar, and he let them hold the Oscar as well. Yeah. But yeah, other than that, that's the only place I think I remember going to.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess if you weren't reading the comics, so I guess that wasn't influencing things too much for you. But
oh no, I say the only thing that interests me on comics are the artwork that are on the covers. I really enjoy that much of comics, and lately it's been John Royle that I like a lot. So, but I do like Robert Atkins' work too. So.
And your interaction with Larry Hama, was that typically at the end of the process that he'd be coming up with the name? So you'd have done the design, he sees it and then comes up with a name, or?
No, Larry came up with the name. other figures. I would come up with the working name, and then I would do all my drawings and everything, and the final design went to Larry. And because Larry didn't have anything to do with design work at all, he only did the bios. And a lot of people don't understand that I created the figure and Larry did the bios of the figure. So a lot of people think that Larry did the whole thing. So.
And marketing is between you and Marvel. So you would do some drawings, you would have some working names. That material, like Kirk Bazigian would mail or fax that, or someone in marketing would mail or fax that to Marvel, and then someone would hand it to Larry Hama, and he would write stuff, and then he would mail it or fax it back to marketing at Hasbro.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not as if there's like an annual meeting between Ron and Larry to compare notes.
No. I mean, we knew each other. We knew each other, and when I go to a convention, Larry and I get along, great. So, yeah.
And you just get a surprise at the end of the process when you find out what their names are, and you're like, Zartan? What on earth's a Zartan?
Yeah. Yeah, doesn't faze me one way or another,
When you were at Hasbro and you were making G.I. Joe, were you going to toy stores and looking at other toys that other companies were making? And did anything jump out?
No, I would go on a field trip, sometime by myself to Toys R Us or whatever, and just see what's out on the shelves and see where our product was on the shelves. And I would sometimes buy figures that I think are things that I could possibly use on a Joe figure. I like the articulation on some figures where others I don't. So yeah, we did field trips like that too.
Speaking of articulation, I think G.I. Joe, as soon as I discovered G.I. Joe, that set a ticking clock for my brothers and my involvement with Masters of the Universe, because the He-Man figures don't have as much articulation. And so I think that actually sped up us growing out of He-Man. Also, the G.I. Joe cartoon was more sophisticated than the He-Man cartoon. So another ticking clock.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to see more articulation in the Joe figures, closer to the comic book style of superhero. But unfortunately, they wouldn't let me do that, and engineers didn't want to do it at that time. Maybe because the figure is so small. They're doing it now with the classifieds, and I think that's pretty great that they have better articulation now.
And you visited Hasbro, the classified team recently, right? So how was that trip? And they gave you a big sort of nod of the sort of a tip of the cap, because they for their HasLab unlockable character, the Hiss Tactician, they had a competition for people to vote which one they wanted based on your kind of color designs for the original ones. So can you tell us about what that process was like?
Well, I was asked to in July, I think, if I wanted to work on a figure for the new Hiss tank. They didn't. I thought I was doing the driver, but it turns out I did a drawing of the his tactician, which goes with the driver, and they were using my color studies that I did back when to create, that figure. They had collectors on the outside vote for the color that they liked the best, and basically went from there. I didn't hear back from them for a while. We had a meeting, I think in September. They showed me the new His tank, and it's huge. It's big.
It's
And it's got it's got lights that light up inside it and everything else, and yeah, it's a nice piece. So when was it? They were supposed to get back to me so I could start the color, and they didn't get back to me till November, I think. And I did a color rendering for them, and I sent that in. So it's in their hands now. So now I'm just waiting to see what it looks like. They have a guy in Virginia who's doing all the packaging for them, and yeah, just have to wait and see.
Mark, did you back this project? Are you getting a gigantic His tank in the mail next year?
I will be. Yeah, I did back it. And yeah, I have no idea where I'm going to put it because it looks like it's massive. But it looked too cool.
I'm going to enjoy this when I visit friends in their homes.
Not this one that fits on my bookshelf, okay?
Right. I have three. I have three of the originals in a box in the room next door. I guess technically one of them is original and two of them were the mail order ones. But I was tempted by this because it's so egregiously big and like audacious and wonderful and daring of Hasbro to do. But I need to be downsizing a little bit this year. And so I decided not to do it. But if the sort of the minimum number, the goal for the campaign stalled out a couple days before the clock ran out, I may have done it just to sort of feel like I could do it. But then I would have felt like I would immediately need to sell it to someone who had missed out and changed their mind. Mark, I have run out of questions, so I completely yield the mic to you.
That's the. I was gonna say that's the design for this original guy.
Right.
What is it like? What is it like seeing your kind of original designs now sort of be having this new lease of life at a 6-inch scale with all of these extra, detailing that computer design and at the bigger scale allows for?
I know. I kind of like the way the classifieds look right now. They're expensive though. They're expensive as hell, and I won't buy a lot. I have some of them here, but I just won't buy what they have. Just way too expensive for me. Also, the packaging is starting to suck. They're just putting an illustration on the front of the package now. There's no. I'd rather see the figure, on the package when it opens up. Have a window there. But
the plastic window.
6-inch figures are nice. I just got my Dusty from Pulse, so I got two of them now. So I'll give one to my son. I don't know what else. I picked up a Viper from Pulse probably about a month ago, the Viper looks pretty good. So, but I'm not collecting a whole bunch of them. I shouldn't be buying any, to tell you the truth.
And
I got too much stuff here.
I wanted to ask you about sort of like the early days and the project that you sort of did on that. So the Codename Blast Off documentary that you did. Can you tell us about that? And it looks like it's now out of stock, and I've missed my chance to get it. Is there a way of being able to watch it?
I don't think so. I had 1,000 copies of that, and I sold out. And there's no way I can, get you another one unless I have more in production. And right now, I can't afford to get those, to do it over again. So, doing that documentary. My son is into film and video production work, and he filmed the whole thing and edited it himself, and he did a really good job on that. We had to hunt down some of the people that are in it and ask for permission to videotape them and everything else. And there are a couple of guys in Rhode Island that wouldn't do it. One was a model maker, and the other one I forgot who he was. And then there was a guy who was in charge of sculpting at the time, and he didn't want to do it. But we got enough people. I even got the CEO of the company, Alan Hassenfeld. He agreed to doing the video, and so we went to see him. I went to Larry Hallman's apartment in New York City, and Larry did something for us. Greg Bernstein in New Jersey. Fred Edens, I believe, when he was here. He lives in Alabama now. But all the people we got were receptive to being on our little documentary and talking about G.I. Joe, and it worked out pretty good. Maybe we'll do another one someday. Who knows if we can find the people. They're all over the country now.
Or maybe right, like an updated, expanded edition.
Yeah. But we'll see.
And I had a very specific question, which.
About
the Baroness there, because she appeared in the first issue of the G.I. Joe comic, which was quite a long time before the toy came out.
Yeah.
So which comic or your toy design did they see your design, or did you see their design? Do you remember?
No, they saw my design. I designed the Baroness. I wanted her to be, educated and whatever. That's why I gave her the glasses. And I wanted her to have armor on her, so that's why she has the breastplate and the things on her legs and everything. After it was sculpted, it came back to us at R&D, and she had rather large boobs at the time when they came back, and marketing says, no, we can't have her with big boobs. No, so Roger Avery had one of his sculptors trim them down, so they weren't quite as big as they turned out to be. And yeah, and then that's history. But the idea for Baroness came from me. So yeah.
And Destro, where did he come from? Because he's an early figure, but he's so unusual, and also so instantly iconic. Where did this idea for Destro and his like chrome head?
I don't know how I got Destro. I don't remember. I just kind of dreaming up some kind of a bad guy. He's got that big collar that goes around his neck. That's supposed to represent a cobra. And then he's got the metal head, and I forgot why I gave him metal. Oh, I think it's probably from Man in the Iron Mask. Yeah. You remember the Man from the Iron Mask? The movie? That's basically where
I
that
know the
came
story,
from.
but yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
And something I often wonder, I sort of a grown man wondering this, but in your opinion, Stro, his chest there, is that an open shirt with his chest showing, or is that some sort of garment?
No, it's an open shirt, open top.
Ron, as a kid, I thought that Destro's chest was not skin, but a shirt or a garment that was sort of a Caucasian peach yellow. And
No, it's supposed to be his skin.
well, I think what I was reacting to is that his torso piece is molded in black plastic. And so this part has to get painted. And that paint on top of the black plastic doesn't look as warm as Caucasian flesh or the like Caucasian plastic that a bunch of the Joes' heads were molded in. And it was only sort of later in life when I started to realize, oh, that's actually his chest. He's just that confident in his costuming.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, next one with sort of the mysteries of these things that I talk about. We've got the version 2 Snake Eyes, and he's got that sort of iconic visor on him, which it's quite a different look to his version 1. Yeah,
he's my favorite.
He's your favorite.
Snake.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
the mask comes.
Where's the inspiration for the mask? Was it?
Oh, okay.
Was it knights in shining armor, or
for some reason I can't remember. I always thought it was one of the characters from Star Trek who had the slit across his eyes. He flew the Enterprise. Do you remember that?
Are you thinking of Geordie LaForge?
No. He wore these glasses that covered his eyes in Star Trek. He's well known. I can't think of his name. But I think it basically came from there. But now that you mentioned the facial, there was a knight that had a shield or something that went across it like that as well. But that's basically where it came from. I
think there was some these sort of early, I think might be World War I, World War II helmets, visor on them. but which I've heard speculated as being an inspiration behind that look.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
And actually, while we're talking about Snake Eyes, just because I've got it in front of me, he came with his little pet or animal companion, Timber the wolf.
Yeah.
Which did was that an idea of yours as well of having the animal companions for the characters?
Tell you the truth, I don't remember even doing the timber at all. That was probably added on later. So, yeah, I don't remember doing them. To tell the truth, I had a, and the thing was, I have a couple of models here of timber. They're now gone, but yeah, I don't remember doing them. Maybe there's a drawing out there of mine that has the wolf.
It's certainly fair if out of the hundreds of figures that you designed and the tens of thousands of drawings and sketches and presentation pieces that you would not remember doing some, and maybe there is a drawing out there with your name on it, or maybe there's a drawing out there with someone else's name on it.
Figure that's 40 years ago. I'm getting old. My memory's going on me.
You have been very patient with us as we have asked these very specific questions.
Yeah, well, it's a long interview, you know.
Yeah, I think we have taken enough of your time, and so thank you for being so generous with it, and hopefully some interesting ground that you haven't been asked about quite so often before.
Let me, Mark.
So
Mark, do you have conventions over there? Do you have conventions over
in the UK? We've got a in the UK we conventions. We've got one specific UK convention for GI Joe called Roll Call, which is organised by a guy called Dave Tree. You've probably met him when he's visited. So I'm hoping that at some point in the future, Dave might give you an invite.
For two.
Fingers crossed.
I was over in England.
I think his budget is small. But...
yeah, we were over in England. Maybe 30 years ago. If I had gotten a friend of mine at Hasbro to stay with Hasbro for a year, I could go anywhere in the world I wanted to go. So I chose England, because of the history. And so we stayed in London for 3 days, and then I rented a vehicle and we drove out in the country for 3 days. So that worked out pretty good, because we went to Stonehenge and Avon, and it was really nice. I enjoyed my time over there, and I'd love to go back there again. And I'd love to go to Scotland too. That's on my bucket list. So one of these days. But thank you for having me.
I certainly hope you do get over here sometime.
Thank you for having me. And
it's been.
I've talked with you.
Thank you so much, Ron. This has been great.
And we'll see you again, Tim, I'm sure.
I will see you again.
Yeah.
If not at a convention, then maybe just for lunch. Maybe I'll come down and see you.
Yeah. I don't want to go to Boston. I went to school there, but that's it.
I'm happy to not ask you to come up to me. I will drive down to you.
Yeah. My son has been working in Boston a couple of days. Yeah. Alrighty.
Well, we're going to sign off, Ron. And why don't we let you click off, and Mark and I can do our wrap up sign off separately.
Okay.
Thanks again, Ron. This has been great.
Okay. Thank you.
So, so yes, that was great. Great to have Ron on, and yeah, a real founding father of GI Joe. Really, I mean, what I wanted to say at the sort of the beginning is that we're normally talking about the comics, and this is kind of a break from that. But when we're talking about what GI Joe looks like, how it's represented visually, the entire look of these characters, it wouldn't exist without the work that Ron had done. So so much of the visual identity of GI Joe owes so much to the work of Ron. So it was good to have him on, good to talk to such an important creator, legend of GI Joe.
Actually, a Hasbro legend. I'm referring to the Hasbro Legends evening and the dinner at HasCon in, was it 2017? So that Ron actually does have that title. It's an honorary one, but Hasbro legend. That's not just us being, in this post Stan Lee way, like, adding superlatives and nicknames.
And Tim, we didn't talk about your bat designs with Ron, but over at A Real American Book, you've got all sorts of interesting behind the scenes designs from Ron, such as these 3 bat illustrations, which sort of just goes to show how in the process of creating these characters, how often the very diverse looks can be experimented with before they land on the final one. So sort of starting here as a bionic trooper, half man, half machine, before sort of getting to the more iconic look that we eventually arrived at with the bats.
Yeah, those 3 drawings in your first slide. I don't think I ever posted the 4th and 5th and 6th ones, but I have 6 of them. And if you are interested in Rudat specifically, at my blog, arealamericanbook.com, in the search field on the top, if you just type Rudat, you'll come up with the 5 or 6 or 7 posts I've made over the years that feature Ron's artwork.
Yeah, there's a great one with Ricondo's pre-production art, and that fantastic post about Torch and Serpentor's Chariot, and a couple more besides. So if you've not yet delved into arealamericanbook.com, there's some great, very relevant content over there. And when you're not talking to me about G.I. Joe or writing about it on your website, Tim, where else can people find you?
At my brick and mortar comic book store, Hub Comics, in Somerville, Massachusetts. And with my creative partners, there are video essays on TV and film at atomicabe.com and our YouTube page, Atomic Abe Productions.
Excellent. To find out more about our show, talkingjoe.co.uk is the place to find it. Talkingjoe.co.uk. Where are we? There we go. So links there to audio shows, our videos on YouTube, the Facebook group, Twitter, Instagram, and our Patreon. All of our backers who are contributing to the running of the show. But I think that is us done for now, Tim, which leaves you just to say that
nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
There we go. we poor Ron wasn't given an opportunity to join in with the singing. Never mind.
Right.